Located near Waimate, Wainono is one of the last freshwater lagoons in the South Island. It's internationally renowned as a habitat for migratory wading birds and native fish. The Wainono Lagoon restoration project has been underway for just over 2 years and is aiming to feed more and better quality fresh water into its 370 hectare area.
It's been recognised for quite some time that there were issues around water management and the environment here. And the Wainono Water Users Group had some amount of community cooperation through the Lower Waitaki Zone Committee. An application was made to central government for funding to assist with restoring the lagoon. And that was through the Ministry for the Environment's Fresh Start for Freshwater Fund. And what that was aimed at addressing is the historical impacts of land use. So recognising that what's happened from land use over the last few decades has had an impact on the environment, and we're in a position now to actually understand what those impacts are and look at how we address them. For the Wainono Lagoon, the key issue that's been identified is the sediment and nutrients going into the lagoon. There's too much, so the lake itself can't process the nutrients that are coming in. The other thing that's happening is that the lake body itself is filling up with sediment that's being carried down the streams. The main thing we can do with the funding for the lagoon is dealing with the sediment. We can physically do things that'll change how much of that is inputted into the system with stream battering, sediment traps, riparian planting, fencing stock out of streams. That'll manage with sediment, but that won't do anything to manage the nutrient inputs from nitrates. Largely phosphorus to a point is managed by sediment control, but nitrates aren't. And so in tandem with the physical works we're doing, there's a planning framework which will look at how farming's done, how we manage nutrients on farm, what are the things we can do to reduce the inputs into the system, and setting limits on what can be applied. We're just standing beside the Hook Drain, which is one of the main tributaries into the Wainono Lagoon. We're working on all the main tributaries, focusing on the Hook Drain and the Hook River itself. They've been identified, especially the Hook River, as the main source of sediment into the lagoon, so we're focusing our efforts through the catchment. It's a variety of farming operations. There's probably about 60% cropping, there's some dairying and a wee bit of sheep and beef. Headwaters of the catchment are public conservation land. There's been monitoring for some of the catchments for a long time as part of the state of the environment monitoring that Environment Canterbury does. However, for this project, we're setting up quite a detailed baseline monitoring for the water quality parameters that we measure. By setting up this decent baseline, we'll be able to say after some time what the effects of our actions have been. So we're monitoring the direct water quality at a range of sites, including this one here. But the other thing we'll be doing is monitoring the measures themselves. So where we've built sediment traps, we'll be monitoring those during rain events to seeing what's the difference between the amount of sediment in the water above this sediment trap and what's coming out below it. We're down at the Waiho Box, which is confluence of the Waiho River and the Waiho Arm, which drains out of the Wainono Lagoon. The significance of this site, I guess, is it controls to a point the hydrology of the lagoon itself. It's dead level from here through the lagoon, and this body of water that goes from here up to the lagoon can flow either way. It can flow into the lagoon, or it can be coming this way, which is pretty unique in itself. The Wainono Lagoon, from an ecological point of view, is super significant nationally and internationally. They're a very rare ecosystem in themselves, where you've got this gravel-bunded lake body. It's freshwater dominated, and it supports a hugely diverse range of both plant habitats and animal habitats. So it's really important for wading birds, migratory birds that move up from Southland. They'll stop off here and then up at Te Wahora. Also freshwater fish, pārtiki flounder, eel, inanga. There's Canterbury mudfish in some of the wetland areas above the lagoon. And also vegetatively around the lagoon, because of the fluctuating level, it sets up a really dynamic habitat that a range of freshwater species have adapted to. So you get these quick changes from a salt turf type community to something completely different in a very short space of time, depending on what the water level is. It represents a huge package of diversity in quite a small place. The outcome that was identified as a key part of one of the things we're trying to achieve is that the water quality is sufficient in here that you can gather mahunga kai from this place again. This was, a huge food gathering place, but when you look at the state of the water now, there's plenty of food there, but it's just, it's not looking too flash. And I guess what that, as an outcome, represents a whole range of things in relation to the water quality parameters that would need to be met for that to be the case. Water quality, sediment, and the general state of things. The other key goal in a more physical and measurable sense was getting the trophic lake index, which is used to measure the general state of water quality in a lake, down to 6.5. That's seen as something that at that level we would get the macrophyte beds back into the system, which can help make the whole system more resilient to what's coming into it. At the moment, the trophic lake index for Wainono Lagoon is 7.2. It'd be good to get down to Pinataka Road at some point. So if we don't. John's been involved since way before the project ever started, with involvement with the Wainono Waters Users Group and being one of the key players with that. It was way ahead of its time as far as I see it, as far as community process goes, and community getting motivated around water issues. And since the project started, John's been my go-to person, both from a runanga point of view, but also from who do I need to talk to about this, who are these guys, what's historically happened here during flood events or whatever, how have people used these surfaces. And so, and that relationship was, really, really important, especially at the start. We were just kind of trying to figure out the best way forward.
I first became involved in water issues about 40 years ago, and then was elected to the chair of the Wainono Water Users Group. We set up a whole of catchment management plan by involving the whole community, farmers, councils and the people of the district, and sat down and worked out a plan and maintenance regime for the river, probably about 10 years ahead of our time. And that was one of the things when it came to getting the pūtea to do the work that's required to enhance the lake system, again, was a feather in our cap, and the fact that we could prove that we'd been out to the community and therefore the government funding was on the right basis. It was major significance, and especially into Punatarakau, the old pā site, where there was up to 240 people on a semi-permanent basis. This provided the sustenance for them, because you had all the different species at the right time of the year and the seasonal times before they moved on to the weka or whatever. They gathered their whitebait, their tuna, when the box was open, or even when it was before the box was built and it opened originally by itself, was influx of yellow-eyed mullet, flounder, and so it was a real major food source for the people. Not just Maori, but the whole community. The biodiversity of the place is phenomenal, and to be able to retain those things, because man is having an effect on it, then man needs to overcome the effects, because without those species, there's no sustenance. It's a very close-knit community, Waimate, and the district, and it always has been. And along with Runana, the people getting together, they all love the area and they love what they've got, and they could see it starting to go downhill. So it was a community effort to overcome the problems.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.